Greetings, students, and welcome to Chapter Review for Chapter 4 of Michael Molloy's Experiencing the World's Religions. The topic is Buddhism. And on Test 2, Buddhism comprise over half of the questions on this test. There will be 48 questions on Buddhism out of a total of 87, counting for credit. And so you will want to know the material quite well. Of course, the first thing to remember is always have your book marked to the page on the key terms, because almost all of the key terms will have a question pertaining to them on the test. Also, after that, the most important thing will be to have handy my lecture notes. And in these notes in particular, I've noticed that many of the questions that I have written for the test are taken directly from those notes, as opposed to taking them directly out of the textbook. And so that you will want to have that handy and refer there first. In particular, I noticed that the question that I have on the Eightfold Path or Eightfold Way, the terms that I use in that particular question and the possible answers are those translations that are used in the lecture notes. So you will want to particularly note that. Also, before going any further, I have to say that there are two questions on Buddhism that will have to not count, or you'd automatically get credit for it, because I did not include the material in my lecture notes that are on the questions. And one of the questions has to do with the 10 precepts. That was an omission from the lecture notes that are found on Blackboard currently. And the other one has to do with Chinese Buddhist monasteries, which that question, I realize, came from an older version of the book, and I don't believe the information occurs in the current 4th edition of Molloy's book. So those two questions on Chinese Buddhist monasteries and the question on the 10 precepts, they simply do not count. Also, what you will want to know is to make sure that you have read through the material, but there's really very few items that are in the book not included in my lecture notes that will be covered on the test. In particular, though, I do want to bring to your attention, this is on page 130. Towards the bottom of that particular page, there is around the 3 marks of reality, both a few sentences before and a few sentences after, 2 questions on that material there. And then also, just to know some of what's going on there, in the early development, the couple questions on the spread of Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, but that information is actually more succinctly put in the lecture notes that pertains to that, and in terms of the geographical expansion of those 2 forms of Buddhism. Then also the section on Theravada art and architecture, there's really nothing in the test on that. Some things on Mahayana, and outside of what's in the lecture notes, there's really not a lot that will be on the test that simply comes from the book itself. Looking this over, like getting to the several schools of Mahayana, there's the only 2 that are covered on the test, and you will need to look in the book for this, is there's 1 question each about Pure Land Buddhism, page 165, and then also one about Nichiren Buddhism on 166. So you will want to be sure to look that material over. Then also, when you get to the section, there's several questions on Zen Buddhism. And probably the basic information you will find in my lecture notes. There is a section in there where I talk about the 2 different forms of Zen Buddhism, which unfortunately Molloy does not go into detail on. So you will want to look to the lecture notes on Zen Buddhism. And probably most everything you need to know on Zen Buddhism is in the lecture notes, as opposed to being in the textbook. Though it doesn't hurt to check the textbook out again on that. And with Tibetan Buddhism, some of that, let's see, a lot of like Buddhism in the modern world, I don't think there's really anything there you need to know for the test other than to know who the Dalai Lama is. And though it's a lot of interesting information. So actually that pretty well covers it. So the important thing to know is to make sure you have key terms bookmarked and the textbook, and also to have a copy of the lecture notes at your hand, and then make sure you look over some of the other stuff too. But you will find that really there's much of the material in the textbook itself that it would be hard to pick it out what's going to be on the test. The questions themselves, the majority are taken directly from the lecture notes. So good luck, students. Best wishes.